The bell above the door of Garrison's Gourmet Market didn't jingle. It tolled like a judgment. Jax huddled into his oversized, grime-streaked army jacket, though the California heat outside was already pushing 90 degrees. He kept his head down, eyes fixed on the scuffed linoleum, counting the steps to the counter. In his right hand, clenched so tight his knuckles were white, was a fistful of quarters and dimes, $4.30 exactly. The price of the cheapest pre-made ham sandwich. He had been saving for 3 days. 3 days of ignoring the gnawing emptiness in his stomach. 3 days of walking past trash cans fighting the urge to dig, just to feel like a human being for 5 minutes. Just to buy food with money like a normal person. Hey, you. The voice cracked through the air like a whip. Jax flinched, stopping 10 feet from the deli counter. Rick, the store manager, stormed out from the back office. Rick was a man who wore his cheap suit like armor and his authority like a bludgeon. He had slicked back hair and a sneer that seemed permanently etched into his face. I told you last week, Rick spat, closing the distance, his polished shoes clicking aggressively. I don't want your kind in here. You scare the customers. Jax swallowed hard, his throat dry as sandpaper. I have money, he rasped, opening his hand to show the sweaty coins. Just want sandwich. Paying customer. Paying customer. Rick laughed, a sharp, cruel sound. He slapped Jax's hand. The coins scattered, pinging off the floor, rolling under shelves and display cases. You smell like a sewer kid. You think my customers want to buy produce that's been breathing the same air as you. Jax dropped to his knees, scrambling to pick up the quarters. This was his dinner. This was his dignity. Leave it, Rick shouted. He grabbed the back of Jax's jacket and hauled him up. Jax was 23, but months of malnutrition had left him gaunt, easy to manhandle. Rick shoved him toward the door. The few shoppers in the store, a woman in yoga pants, a businessman on his phone, looked away. They studied the labels on wine bottles, pretending the violence wasn't happening. Rick shoved Jax out the front door, so hard he stumbled and fell onto the burning concrete of the sidewalk. And stay out, Rick yelled. Next time I see you, I'm calling the cops. Go out somewhere else, trash. The door slammed shut. Jax sat there, the heat of the pavement seeping through his thin jeans. He looked at his empty hands. He had managed to hold on to 2 quarters. 50 cents. Not enough for anything. He didn't cry. He had forgotten how to cry 6 months ago, somewhere between the second time his foster funding was cut and the first time he slept in a dumpster. Crying required water, and he was too dehydrated to waste it. He pushed himself up, dusting off his bleeding palms. He was invisible. He was a ghost haunting the streets of Bakersfield, a smudge on the scenery that people wished would just wash away. The underpass was an oven. The concrete absorbed the day's heat and radiated it back at night, creating a suffocating pocket of stagnant air. Jax lay on his sleeping bag, a thin, torn thing he'd found behind a camping supply store, and stared up at the soot-stained beams of the highway above. Trucks rumbled overhead, a rhythmic thumping that used to keep him awake but now served as a lullaby. It was the heartbeat of a world he was no longer part of. He reached into his backpack. It was his entire life, 2 spare T-shirts, a toothbrush, a half-empty water bottle, and a photo of the Millers. They were his foster parents when he was 12. They were the only ones who had ever looked at him like he was a son, not a paycheck. But Mr. Miller had a heart attack, and Mrs. Miller couldn't keep the license, and Jax went back into the system. The system that chewed him up, and on his 18th birthday spat him out with a handshake and a good luck. Now, 5 years later, he was part of the landscape. Spare a smoke. The voice came from a pile of rags 10 feet away. It was Old Man Henry, a Vietnam vet whose mind was still stuck in the jungle half the time. Don't smoke, Henry. You know that, Jax whispered. Right, Henry mumbled, rolling over. Just checkin'. Big storm comin', kid. I can feel it in my knees. It's July, Henry. No rain in the forecast. Not rain, Henry muttered, drifting back to sleep. Something else. Jax took a sip of warm water. His stomach cramped, twisting around the hunger. He closed his eyes and tried to dream of the Miller's kitchen. The smell of pancakes. The safety of a locked door. The next morning, the sun rose like a hostile eye. Jax packed his camp, it took 30 seconds, and began the trudge downtown. It was Tuesday. The soup kitchen on 5th Street opened at 7 a.m. If he hurried, he could beat the line. The city was waking up. Shop owners rolled up metal gates. The smell of brewing coffee from the cafes was a torture Jax had learned to endure. He kept his head down, shoulders hunched, making himself small. The Invisible Man. He reached the soup kitchen just as the line was forming. He took his place behind a woman who was arguing with the air. He knew her. She was harmless. Everyone out here had their demons. Some were just louder than others. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of powdered eggs and bleach. Jax took his tray, scrambled eggs, a slice of toast, a cup of weak juice, and found a corner table. He ate slowly, chewing every bite 50 times to make it last. He was wiping the last of the egg yolk with his toast when the world ended. It didn't start with a shake. It started with a sound, a deep, low-frequency groan that seemed to come from the center of the earth. The juice in Jax's cup rippled. Then the floor dropped. It wasn't a sway. It was a violent, piston-like jerk. The soup kitchen erupted. Trays flew. The massive metal pots in the serving line crashed down, scalding soup hissing across the floor. The lights shattered, plunging the room into gray, dusty twilight. Jax dove under the heavy oak table, curling into a ball, hands over his head. The roar was deafening. It sounded like a freight train was driving through the room. The building groaned, bricks grinding against bricks. Dust choked the air, turning it solid. It lasted 40 seconds. It felt like 40 years. When the shaking stopped, the silence was worse. Then came the screams. Jax crawled out. The air was a white fog of plaster dust. The front wall of the soup kitchen was gone, collapsed into the street. He stumbled through the hole, coughing, his eyes stinging. Outside was chaos. Car alarms blared in a dissonant symphony. A water main had burst, shooting a geyser into the sky. But Jax's eyes were drawn to the building across the intersection. It was an old brick apartment complex for stories high. Or it had been. The facade had peeled away like wet cardboard. The bottom 2 floors had pancaked, crushed under the weight of the upper stories. A mountain of rubble, rebar, concrete, furniture, glass, spilled into the street. People were running. Some away from the dust, others toward the pile, screaming names. Jax stood frozen. His survival instinct screamed at him to run. Go to the park. Open ground. Aftershocks are coming. Then he saw him. Rick, the store manager from yesterday, was standing near the rubble. His pristine suit was covered in gray dust. He was holding a bleeding cut on his forehead, wandering in circles. My car. Rick was screaming, pointing at a flattened BMW crushed by a slab of masonry. Look at my car. Someone help me. Jax felt a surge of disgust, but he pushed it down. He turned to leave to find safety. That's when he heard it. It was faint, buried under the wail of sirens and Rick's selfishness. A high-pitched, terrifying sound. Daddy! Daddy! Jax stopped. He looked at the pile of twisted metal and stone. Help me. Please. It was coming from deep inside the collapse. Rick heard it too. He paused, looked at the rubble, then looked at his car, then looked down the street toward safety. He turned his back on the pile and started running away. Jax looked at Rick's retreating back, then at the unstable mountain of death in front of him. He was invisible. If he walked away, no one would know. No one expected anything from him. But he remembered the Millers. You're a good boy, Jax. You have a good heart. Damn it, Jax whispered. He dropped his backpack and ran toward the ruin. The pile shifted under his feet as he climbed. Shards of glass sliced through the soles of his worn-out sneakers. I hear you, Jax screamed, coughing as he inhaled concrete dust. Keep yelling. I'm coming. I'm here. I'm stuck. The voice was small, trembling with a terror that broke Jax's heart. A bystander, a man in a construction vest, grabbed Jax's ankle. Hey, don't go up there, kid. The whole thing is going to come down. Jax kicked his leg free. There's a kid in there. Let go. He scrambled higher, crawling over a refrigerator that had been crushed flat. He followed the voice to a gap between 2 massive slabs of flooring. It was dark down there, a jagged throat of debris. What's your name? Jax yelled, pulling a loose brick away. Mia, the girl sobbed. I want my daddy. Okay, Mia. My name is Jax. I'm coming down. Jack squeezed his body into the gap. It was tight. Rebar snagged his jacket, tearing the fabric. He shimmied down 5 feet, into a pocket of space created by a fallen steel I-beam. It was pitch black, save for a sliver of sunlight filtering through the dust. Jax pulled out a cheap plastic lighter from his pocket and flicked it. The flame illuminated a nightmare. A little girl, maybe 7 years old, was pinned. She was lying on her side, covered in gray dust, her dark hair matted with blood. A heavy wooden beam lay across her legs, trapping her against a chunk of concrete. But what caught Jax's eye was her jacket. It was a denim cut, sized for a child, but high quality. On the back, embroidered in red and white thread, were the words, Hells Angels Prospect Daughter Nomad. Jax blinked. The Hells Angels. The most notorious motorcycle club in the world. This wasn't just any kid. Hi, Mia, Jax said, forcing his voice to be steady. I got you. Mia looked up, her eyes wide and white in the soot-covered face. My legs hurt. I can't feel my toes. Okay, we're gonna fix that. Jax assessed the beam. It was thick, part of the building's support structure. It easily weighed 300 pounds. He grabbed it and pulled. His muscles strained, cords standing out in his neck. It didn't budge. The ground rumbled. An aftershock. Debris rained down on them. Jax threw his body over Mia, shielding her. A chunk of concrete the size of a fist slammed into his shoulder, deadening his arm instantly. He grit his teeth against the scream wanting to escape his throat. Are you okay? Mia whimpered beneath him. I'm fine, Jax lied, sweat stinging his eyes. Just the building settling. He looked around frantically. He needed leverage. He saw a piece of twisted steel pipe, a gas line or water pipe, sticking out of the rubble. He grabbed it, wrenching it back and forth until it snapped free. Mia, listen to me. I'm going to lift this. When I do, you have to pull your legs out. Fast. Can you do that? I don't know. You have to. You're brave, right? Your dad, he rides a bike. She nodded. He's the president. He's Iron. Okay then. You're Iron's daughter. You're tough as nails. On 3. Jax wedged the pipe under the beam, using a block of cement as a fulcrum. He positioned his shoulder under the pipe. His hands were slippery with blood from the glass cuts. 1, 2, 3. Jax roared, driving his legs into the unstable ground. He pushed with everything he had, every ounce of anger, every year of hunger, every bit of frustration at a world that ignored him. The beam groaned. It lifted an inch, 2 inches. Move, Mia. Move. The little girl screamed in pain as she dragged her body backward. I'm out. I'm out. Jax let the beam slam back down. The pipe clattered away. He collapsed next to her, gasping for air, his vision swimming with black spots. His shoulder felt like it was on fire. You did it, Mia whispered, reaching out with a trembling hand to touch his face. We aren't done yet, Jax wheezed. Come here. He scooped her up. She was light, but his body was failing. He climbed back up the shaft of debris, shielding her head with his hand. The climb was agony. His shredded palms slipped on the rocks. When his head popped out of the rubble, the world came back into focus. Fire trucks had arrived. Men in yellow turnout gear were swarming the pile. Over here, Jax croaked. 2 firefighters scrambled up the pile. They took Mia from his arms. I got her. We need a medic, one shouted. Jax slumped against a piece of broken wall. The adrenaline was fading, leaving only pain. He looked at his hands. They were raw meat. His shoulder was swelling. You okay, son? A paramedic was suddenly in his face, shining a light in his eyes. I'm fine, Jax mumbled. Just tired. Come on, let's get you in the rig. That was a hell of a thing you did. The hospital was a war zone. The ER was overflowing with the injured, broken bones, lacerations, crush injuries. Jax sat on a gurney in the hallway. A nurse had cleaned and bandaged his hands and put his arm in a sling. He had bruised ribs and a potential rotator cuff tear, but nothing life-threatening. He was shirtless, his jacket lost in the rubble. He felt exposed. People walked by, doctors, police officers, and their eyes slid over him. Even here, even after saving a life, he was just a homeless guy taking up space. Hey. A nurse appeared, holding a clear plastic bag with his backpack inside. Found this with you in the ambulance. Thanks. Jax hugged the bag to his chest. The little girl, Mia? She's asking for you, the nurse said, her voice softening. She's in room 304. Her leg is broken, but she's going to be okay. She won't sleep until she sees Jaxa. Jax slid off the gurney. His legs were wobbly. I'll go. He walked down the corridor. He reached room 304. Mia was in the bed, her leg in a purple cast, hooked up to monitors. She looked tiny. Jax, she chirped when she saw him. He walked over, feeling awkward in his dirty jeans and bandages. Hey, tough guy. How's the leg? It hurts. But I was brave. Yeah, you were. My daddy is coming, she said, her eyes heavy with sedatives. I told him you saved me. I told him you're my hero. Jack smiled sadly. I'm nobody's hero, Mia. Just a guy. No, she insisted, grabbing his uninjured hand. You're my friend. Jack squeezed her hand gently. For the first time in years, he felt a connection. Suddenly, the air in the hospital changed. The background noise of the beeping machines, the murmuring voices, died down. It was replaced by a low rumble from outside. It grew louder and louder until the windows vibrated. It sounded like thunder rolling across the ground. The double doors at the end of the hallway burst open. The hospital security guard stepped back, looking terrified. A phalanx of men walked in. They wore leather vests, cuts, that creaked as they moved. They were big men, bearded, tattooed, with faces that looked like they had been chiseled out of granite. Leading them was a giant. He stood 6'5", with arms the size of tree trunks and a beard that reached his chest. His eyes were red-rimmed and frantic. The patch on his chest said President. This was Marcus Ironvein. Where is she? Iron bellowed, his voice shaking the walls. Daddy! Mia cried out. Iron sprinted to the room, disregarding the nurses. He fell to his knees beside the bed, burying his face in the sheets next to his daughter. The giant began to sob, great heaving shudders that racked his massive frame. I thought I lost you, he choked out. Oh God, baby, I thought I lost you. The hallway filled with other bikers. There were dozens of them. They lined the walls, silent sentinels, their faces grim with relief. After a long moment, Iron stood up. He wiped his face with a rough hand. He looked at Mia. Who? You said someone pulled you out. Mia pointed at Jax, who was standing in the corner, trying to blend into the wall. Him, Daddy. Jax. He lifted the building off me. Iron turned. He looked at Jax. He took in the dirty jeans, the gaunt ribs, the bandaged hands, the sling. He saw the poverty and the pain. Iron took 2 massive steps and stood in front of Jax. Jax flinched, expecting a blow. Instead, Iron engulfed him in a hug that smelled of leather, gasoline, and tobacco. It was a crushing embrace, but it wasn't violent. It was desperate. Thank you, Iron whispered into Jax's ear, his voice thick with emotion. You gave me my life back. Jax didn't know what to do. He awkwardly patted the giant biker's back with his good hand. She was brave. Iron pulled back, keeping his hands on Jax's shoulders. You're hurt. I'm fine. You're not fine. Iron looked at the other bikers. Doc, get over here. A biker with a medic patch on his vest hurried over. I'm on it, boss. Just then, a commotion started at the nurse's station down the hall. I'm telling you, I was there. I directed the rescue. Jax stiffened. He knew that voice. Rick, the store manager, was talking to a police officer and a news crew that had managed to get inside. He had a small bandage on his head and was gesturing wildly. The homeless kid? Please. He was looting. I saw him digging through the rubble, trying to steal from the apartments. I'm the one who spotted the girl. Rick turned and saw the bikers. He saw the cameras. His eyes lit up. This was his moment. He strutted down the hallway, avoiding the menacing glares of the Hells Angels. He walked right up to Iron and Jax. Officer. Rick yelled to the cop following him. That's him. That's the looter. I want him arrested. He was trespassing on my property before the quake, and he was stealing during it. Iron slowly turned his head. The air temperature seemed to drop 20 degrees. Who is this clown? Rick puffed out his chest. I'm Rick Salinger. I manage the gourmet market. And I'm telling you, this bum, he pointed a manicured finger at Jax, is a thief. He didn't save anyone. He probably caused the collapse trying to strip copper wire. Jax looked down, shame burning his face. I didn't. Shut up, trash. Rick snapped. He looked at Iron, trying to force a conspiratorial smile. You know how these people are, right? Looking for a handout. I'm the hero here. I called 911. Mia's voice cut through the tension, clear and angry. Liar. Everyone froze. He's a liar, Daddy. Mia screamed. He ran away. He was crying about his car. Jax came back. Jax lifted the beam. That man ran away. Iron looked at his daughter, then he looked at Rick. The expression on Iron's face shifted from gratitude to something primal and terrifying. Iron stepped closer to Rick. Rick took a step back, his confidence evaporating. You ran away? Iron asked, his voice low like a growling dog. And you left my daughter to die? Ah, I went to get help. Rick stammered, sweat breaking out on his forehead. And then you call the man who did save her a thief? Iron loomed over him. You call him trash? Iron turned to the police officer. Officer, get this piece of garbage out of my sight before I do something that will violate my parole. The officer, who looked like he wanted absolutely no trouble with the Hells Angels, grabbed Rick's arm. Come on, sir. Let's go. But he's a bum. Rick squealed as he was dragged away. Iron turned back to Jax. The rage vanished, replaced by profound respect. He called you trash, Iron said softly. But you're the only man in this room standing tall. Iron unclasped his leather vest. He took off. Underneath, he wore a black t-shirt. He held the vest out. The hallway went silent. The other bikers straightened up. I can't take your cut, Jack said, wide-eyed. Not mine, Iron said. Yours. He handed the vest to a biker named Stitch. Get a new prospect cut. No. And get a support patch. Iron looked at Jax. You got a place to stay, son? Jax looked at his feet. Under the I-5 overpass. Iron shook his head. Not anymore. The next afternoon, Jax was discharged. He walked out the front doors of the hospital, blinking in the sunlight. He expected to walk to the bus stop. Instead, he stopped dead. The entire parking lot was full. Not with cars, but with motorcycles. Harleys, custom choppers, cruisers. Chrome glinted in the sun like a sea of diamonds. There were hundreds of them. 825 to be exact. The Bakersfield Charter had called in favors. Angels from San Bernardino, Oakland, even nomads from Arizona had ridden in overnight. When Jax appeared, a silence fell over the crowd. Then one engine started. Then another. Then 100. The sound was physical. It vibrated in Jax's chest, rattling his bones. It was a roar of approval, a salute of horsepower. Iron stood at the front, next to a sleek black bike. He waved Jax over. Hop on, Iron shouted over the noise. Where are we going? Home. Jax climbed onto the back of Iron's bike. He held on tight. The procession moved out. Police had blocked off the streets, not to arrest them, but to escort them. The news story had broken overnight. Homeless hero saves biker princess. As they rode through downtown Bakersfield, the sidewalks were lined with people. They were cheering. Jax saw people holding signs. Thank you, Jax. They rode past the gourmet market. The windows were boarded up, not from the earthquake, but because someone had thrown a brick through them earlier that morning. A sign on the door said under new management. Rick had been fired by corporate as soon as the video of him fleeing the scene went viral. Jax felt a strange sensation in his eyes. Tears. For the first time in years, he was crying. The wind whipped the tears away as fast as they fell. They pulled up to a neat apartment complex in a quiet neighborhood. The bikes filled the street, a river of leather and steel. Iron hopped off and handed Jax a key. Apartment 2B. Paid up for a year. Utilities, too. Jax stared at the key. Why? Why would you do this? Iron put a heavy hand on Jax's shoulder. He looked him in the eye. Because family looks out for family. And you saved my heart, Jax. That makes you family. Iron signaled to the other bikers. A man stepped forward holding a brand new leather vest. On the back, it didn't have the full death's head patch that had to be earned with time, but it had the filthy fuse support patch and a bottom rocker that read, "Protected by Hell's Angels." "Put it on," Iron said. Jack slipped his arms into the vest. It was heavy. It felt like armor. It felt like a hug. "You need a job?" Iron asked. I do anything. I work hard. My shop needs a mechanic." "We'll teach you. $25 an hour to start." Jax looked at the crowd of 825 tough, scary men who were all looking at him with respect. He looked at the apartment building. He looked at the vest. He thought about the cold concrete under the bridge. He thought about the hunger. He thought about Rick spitting on his hands. That life was gone, buried under the rubble. Jax Hayes stood straight, his chin up, the Hell's Angels vest settling on his shoulders. "Thank you," Jax said. "Thank you, brother." Iron grinned, a terrifying, beautiful sight. "Welcome home, kid." Iron revved his engine, and 825 bikers revved back, a thunderous promise that Jax Hayes would never be invisible again.